it's exceptional how smooth this works.
I like that they.
My chip ups, man.
Hey?
I got this shit.
When I got this, I had to the name of the band and all that, but the song absolutely knew.
Yeah.
But the song I knew. I'm like, well, what fucking song was it from the group?
Yeah.
And then the Roy Jones Jr.
Yeah.
Is cool.
Yeah, well,
he's a reference.
Yeah, that's him, right?
Yeah.
He's rapping with him. That's his backup group.
This is Roy Jones Jr.
Jones Jr. is an original OG because he did 3 different things, right? I was telling Jay, the night he'd have defend his title, he'd go. He's a professional basketball player. He played for the Marlins or something, which is like a professional league out of Miami. He'd go and he'd play a full game during the day, go back that night, do his fight, and then do the after party.
We're talking about Roy Jones Jr.
Roy Jones Jr.
You all must have forgot that guy.
You bet. Yeah.
That's him?
That's him.
On the lead?
Well, you'll hear him like you when you watch, like if you see the video, you'll see there are kind of like the headbangers are kind of like NWA. They're like G Unit with 50 Cent, right? Like so you once you're used to their, like when you hear Roy, you can tell Roy's got that, he's got that drawl to him a little bit. Yeah. Well,
that's a great way to kick this off. So Old Guard Athletics opening the Echo Chamber, and we've got a unique guest today who not only is going to talk about the world of martial arts, but rap apparently too.
Black belt.
All right, that's pretty slick.
The history of rapping, listening to
Wu-Tang Clan and all these guys, right? So for those that are tuning in by audio, you would have caught that. That's Troy Scheer's song "Can't Be Touched," featuring, I guess, cameos from Roy Jones Jr., which I thought was just the title of the song. I didn't know he was actually singing, so that is pretty damn cool. Before we kick off episode 7, just to recognize we're missing one of our OGAs. He's gone down under today. He's probably en route with the family. And John Murphy's not with us, but we're going to carry on.
Down under being Australia, surgeries,
yeah.
knife.
That's true. Yeah, at this age too, you might want to clarify.
You don't know.
Right? Yes,
in our histories of probably all of us have a mile of scars if you lined them up. So
yeah, no, it's a good point. So maybe in just a quick run through on the roll call. So because John's not with us, we got Mike Nederhoff, Jay Beavis, and then a really unique Old Guard athlete guest, Troy Scheer. And I'll just leave it at that because maybe this is a segue, Jay, that you can introduce because you got a personal relationship with Troy. But just before,
Jon Somers is here as well,
oh, yeah.
And he's the technological whiz that forgot to hit save on our last episode.
So,
John, any comment on that before we get rolling today?
Yeah, I've been put on notice that not to do that again today. So I 100% will make sure I don't touch the screen until everyone signs off. Clearly not.
This is what happens when you get 4 old guys and technology.
Fuck.
Well, and somehow a program they created that you can close it out without saving.
Well, no. I looked at it and you can save it, but it doesn't prompt you that you haven't saved it, right? So anyway, it was my idiotic move. So. I will not do that again, so I apologize. But
which last episode 6, is still available on YouTube if you haven't watched it.
That's right.
You see it live in action, and it was one of the more enjoyable ones I've had. I have to say, I really liked it. So
yeah, no, it was a good one, even though I missed the audio. But yeah, the segue to the connection between Jay and Troy. Just I think the uniqueness of Troy today is we've had ourselves, obviously, from an athlete perspective. Certainly at the core, and then some of us have done, maybe some instructing, coaching, but in terms of like even running an athletic venue or business, I certainly haven't done that. And Troy has done all these things. He's been a high-level athlete for his entire life. He's taken over the family business and martial arts and coached. So it's all those. But anyway, that's the unique stuff we'll get into. But the connection here is really, I guess, at a friendship level between Jay and yourself.
Well, I'm excited as heck to have Troy here. The first, when we started thinking about it, he was guest number 1 in my head.
That's cool.
For me to choose for the show. I don't want this whole podcast to be about mine and Troy's relationship. That's going to creep in there because it really is. He's an interesting guy, even without knowing me, if you can believe that. But the reality is, it's going to creep in because we've been friends since I think I started in it was 84, it was 85, and he was there. And we competed and trained together, competed. He was always a higher belt, a little bit older than me. But we eventually ended up doing point fighting, competition together, training together. And then he became my coach in kickboxing and MMA. And then we were partners in putting on fight shows, and we're hunting partners now. So we've been friends for the amount of time that it takes to earn an OGA status.
So just begin, I mean, because we live here and we're broadcasting live from the metropolitan epicenter of the world, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. But you've talked about this connection at where? Like this connect, like just I'm prompting where you guys.
Well, through Scheer's martial arts. So I guess
right.
if you want the brief history with, I started Scheer's martial arts in '85 at his father's school on Broadway.
Yeah, because my dad started in 1967.
This is what I wanted.
So it was like the first, I guess you could say, non-YMCA program that actually was a legit business. He opened it up he came here in 65, but just had a hard times from Fort McLeod, Alberta.
Okay.
And his instructor told him, hey, we got nothing in Saskatoon. You should go check it out. I have a friend that, trains at the Y, Bob Beaumont, who's like very high level judo guy. So my dad came out here, met him, and kind of hooked him up and started looking for places. And when you talk to my dad, he'd be like, yeah, like, because he came from a pretty hardcore system of training. And he said, like, when he went and they did their demos and everything else, and he had all these students and they're all just excited to get going. And then he said, like, a month later, you had no students left because he had no idea that, you guys don't want to put up with all the shit that we do? Like,
you're not easing into it.
Beating the hell out of each other and just on a regular, it was just hardcore. Like, so, like, most people are like, oh, I just saw Enter the Dragon or something like that. I just thought I would
wax on, wax
do
off.
A couple classes, and it would be
some cars.
There'd be no issues, right? But I think it took him a while, and then I think that's when he finally, like, literally in 2000 in 67 is when he actually established Scheer's and was able to open and stay open. Because in between that time, he was bouncing at that time, which was one of, I think, Saskatchewan's biggest nightclubs, being the Red Line. Which
there's a newspaper article I was reading when I warming up at your place, but about your dad bouncing at this infamous place, eh?
Yeah, like they used to bring bands up from like Las Vegas. There was a guy that ran it, was like a rich chicken farmer, and they had, because of the mine, all the guys would come in.
So where was it? Up on?
It's where Bridges used to be.
Yeah, up on 22nd.
Like two
right?
levels. Yeah, and they had their, I guess you could say, blue collar level, and then they had their suit and tie level, and then my dad came in because everyone that showed up for the blue collar saw where all the ladies were on the other side, and they'd always want to get in that side. So he was there to kind of keep the peace, right? And so that article you're talking about is the infamous, him and the Saskatchewan Rough Riders and Ron Lancaster, and them all getting re-educated about, you don't get to go on that side of the room. But that's like a whole. I mean, he could be a guest. Absolutely. One day, no one would get to speak because you'd just be like,
we would love it.
Yeah, no, he'd be a good one.
So this, so we started 65 to 67, then he starts here, and then it's located where? Did he
originally it was where the Lululemon is, right across from, well, actually it was on just off Broadway. There was the Knights of Columbus Hall there on the end of the corner opposite by where the bike doctor is.
Okay.
So it was just on the opposite corner, right?
Okay.
And so it was there. He started in the basement there. And I think that's when he was on and off.
Okay.
And then when he started more legit and would actually kind of keep students, that was over where the Lululemon used to be. It used to be called the Ritz Hotel. So if you go back and you look at you used to have the bank there and everything on the corner. There used to be a hotel right there, and there was the Ritz Hotel. And down in the basement, they had a ballroom that they rented out, and that's what we ended up. It was like we had like this huge dance ballroom, and back then it was kind of cool because it was very fitting for, you know, a martial arts studio, which I didn't think of it now, but when I look back at the photos, everything was, you know, wood, like dance floor was wood.
Yeah.
So it was very like it looked like a very traditional.
Like a
Dojo.
dance studio. Yeah.
Really,
yeah,
it looked like a traditional, yet it was originally a dance studio.
Oh, wow.
And then you'd have every week. I mean, I remember growing up in the place, right? Like, I mean, that's where I was every day after school. Is that me?
we
Oh, I thought I turned.
we have our first guest interrupt. At least it's a guest, not one of us.
And you know,
That's
darn
cool.
smart one.
No, that's good.
But so growing that, I mean, I just grew up because every day I had the same routine. It was go to school, come home, wait for my mom to get home from her job because she worked at Cole's bookstore.
Yeah.
You know, she managed that place, and then she'd come grab me and take me, and then we'd go down to the karate school, and that's where I spent the rest of my evening, right? So every day I was there, and then it was like, oh, it's about that time. And then I'd always go and get a good spot because right in the Ritz Hotel, they had a bar called the Apollo Room. And so usually by that time, everybody had mustered up enough courage, whoever was in the bar there, and they would make their way downstairs because they'd leave the bar and see this, oh, karate. And there's like, oh, check this out. And they would make their way down, and my dad would be teaching class, and I'd be usually kind of hanging out on the side because we originally didn't have kids classes. So I would kind of go to the adult classes and kind of do stuff off on the side, and hopefully someone would throw me a bone basically of what I could do.
Jesus Christ.
And then these guys would come, and they'd get a little confidence, and they'd start talking loud, and then they'd start beaking, and you know, at about a certain time, I knew because it was kind of like in the basement. There was like a loop, like where the main studio was. You came down the stairs, and then you kind of passed the office, and then there's the hall. But then you went this way, and that was where the warm up area and the gym was kind of.
Yeah.
And then you'd loop around, and it was like there was like another room, and then like there's like a living quarters there actually, and then it looped right back. So that was usually when the person started getting beaky. I knew kind of, I know my dad, and I could just see, and when you meet him, he's the most laid back,
Yeah.
whatever. And then after it, you just kind of like, you just hear him say, "That's enough," and I'd have to book it because I knew that if I made it around to the other side, I could get by the stairs. And granted, I've seen quite a few people go up those stairs far faster than they could ever come down. And it would just be like all the way up, right? And then come back to class, and it was just like nothing happened, and everyone's just like in shock. But I was just like, oh, another one.
He's like, no big deal.
Yeah, it was common, like weekly, guaranteed, right? So it wasn't like something that it was like it caught me off guard or anything. Once again, it was just something I was used to.
I've known of you and known you a little bit, but certainly not like Jay. But do you have siblings?
I have a sister. I have an older sister.
Okay, and
Yeah.
and was she part of it? Did she grow up at that place? Still?
Yeah, no, she did. Obviously, she's 3 years older than me. So by that time, like, I mean, she was already, she kind of liked social life with her friends and everything more often. I was younger, so I kind of got wrapped into that. She would come there, you know, on a regular basis. And she did, like, I mean, she competed at a pretty high level herself. Too. Yeah. Because she would have been kind of in that era where there wasn't a lot of women competing.
Oh, she would have been an anomaly for sure.
Yeah. And I remember
She taught and she instructed because she was very,
she
very
was in
strict.
Well, she would have been like literally like when Jay and Danny started, they were in probably some of her classes on a regular basis. Because I wasn't really teaching them at that time. I would sometimes come in and assist, or I'd assist sometimes with my dad. And because I mean, I didn't really start teaching and assisting until I was like kind of 14, 15. And then it was like, and then
keep in mind those 10 years of instruction already.
Yeah.
You know.
So Troy, we typically ask people when you figured out that you couldn't turn off this desire for athletic pursuit. Did you even have a choice?
No, I didn't. Like, that's what, like, I get that question a lot with my boys. Like, people ask me, they're like, so do they get, like, there's no options.
You just go.
That was life.
Yeah.
I can't be left at home alone. So I had to be there. I brought my homework there. I did everything there. At the end of the night, it was probably like 10:30, go home, go to school the next day. And that was my cycle every day. Not until I got older, and then we had moved the school from where we were downtown. My dad had on Broadway, right beside Bud's, there used to be Big Shooter Records, and he had purchased that building and had it for a couple of years. And then when they were going to tear down the Ritz had been sold. He's like, I got to find a new place. And then, his close friend said, well, you got that building, let's just go tear all the walls out and make it the new school. And so that's really probably a year before we moved over there to about maybe 2 years before we moved over there. We just started teaching, like, there was actually kids classes, and we didn't have those before. Like I said, it wasn't a thing that you brought your kids to do. Any kids that were at the school was like special, and they had to be like really hyper focused. Probably not like me.
When I started, there was only, in the kids class, it wasn't like there was age groups. It was pretty much under 16, I think.
Yeah.
And then over 16. Like those were the classes.
So what age did you start?
It was about 10.
Yeah. And so
the floors were wood. So everyone that's got your tatami mats and the kickboxing area, you guys at Scheers, you're all lucky to have that because it was hard wood floor. I remember when those green tatami mats came in and we were like, oh, soft mats, like a floor.
It's like speeding in a Cadillac.
Yeah.
Except you do a throw or something on them, and they were like the old school, like
Straw.
tatamis. So it would be like, whap, you do a throw and you'd see the dust from the tatami. You know what I mean? Because you can't stop it. Like, it's just that straw is just crushed in there, and you wrap it with it. But it was like,
Watch your hands on the table with it.
here we go.
Sorry, the housekeeping.
So,
and then he taps his ring.
Yeah.
This guy.
but just like on this point that Mike raised, I find the whole thing fascinating because it's all you've ever known. But have you ever asked yourself, was there another, like, and I wouldn't say regret or just a consideration, like, or even a desire? Like, I think all of us, I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
I can't imagine living any other way. Like, it's not, some people ask me this, go, well, why don't you do this? Or why, have you considered something else? And I can't even get that thought process in my head.
Yeah. I think I had that a little bit. I mean, my middle years, obviously, because I was like, my friends were playing other sports.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, I'm doing something that nobody knows anything about for the most part. Right. And so they were all playing ball. So I did get my window where I got to go play ball, but it wasn't a typical ball. Everyone else that would say maybe play ball, their parents would come and watch and whatever. My parents were working.
Yeah.
So it would be like after school, I had to go and I had to bike over to my buddy's house because his dad was our coach for softball. And then I went and I was just with that team until the end of the night. And then that was it. And then it kind of, you go home and wait for, my sister would then be taking care of me. So I did softball for a while. And, I really enjoyed it. Up until like the teams that I got on, I thought were pretty good because we always seemed to make it into cities and stuff like that. But that was my first kind of taste of team sports. And after a while, I kind of just got a bad taste in my mouth for it. I like to be responsible for myself and what I do and what others do. And then I just found I kind of got a little bit, maybe it was just I guess you'd say the culture of the team it was kind of like softball, but it seemed like it was like a hockey thing almost, where the parents were like, well, blaming this guy because we lost the city championships, and this guy missed this and this, and it was just this kind of blame game, and it just was like, I remember these guys were my buddies, and it was like they were just broken, and I was just like, how do you like? I don't like this. I don't like this. So I stopped pretty much. I think I played maybe from grade, I want to say 4 to maybe grade 6. And then I was just like, no, I've had enough. I'm good. I prefer even though I literally, I'd be lying otherwise, I literally sucked at the martial arts when I was younger. And it was probably just because I was just a klutz. I was probably the perfect candidate for martial arts. Just because I wasn't super athletic. I wasn't super coordinated. I was tripping over my own feet all the time. My dad was probably more enticed with my sister because she kind of was the scrapper. Like if someone said something sideways,
She still is.
She would take it to him. That way up through kind of high school, and it's like I remember. I mean, granted, the only thing I had going for me was I had a hell of a temper and kind of a very mischievous streak. So those were probably not really good. So I got the end of some pretty good tongue lashings and and spent a lot of time with my principals, and I knew everybody, and it was kind of like that came into play. But I probably, like I said, I didn't really feel like I excelled. I don't think I talk to my boys now, and like they're already like my oldest was like the provincial champion last year for sparring, and the other one, he was runner up. He just like lost by 1 point, and they're winning all this stuff, and then they're like, and I can tell they're like me. They're super competitive. They hate losing, and they're asking me like, well, how was it for you? And I was like, guys, you're winning, like you're placing. Like I didn't win anything till I think I was 12 years old, and I had to go to every weekend. So that was your week, and then every weekend we had to travel to go to a tournament. So we'd leave Friday night, go to a tournament Saturday, and then drive home Sunday. And then I would start my work week again as far as school and then just doing the martial arts center. So
what different things are you passing down to your kids that were different than what your father passed down to you? Clearly your father had a huge impact on you.
He did, but I think what I'm passing down is what I learned from him, actually.
Yeah.
Because he had much different approaches with me and my sister. My dad is super competitive himself, and I think he was that way. She's being older than me. She was like doing very well. She was being really competitive. I would say for women in Canada, nationally rated for sure. High level, even though at that time they didn't track as much stuff. When she would it was like they were almost too much alike, because he would push like, you got to do this, and then it'd be like you could tell there was always that friction there. Yeah. And then I think with me, he realized by that point, because he kind of, I would say, made her kind of pushed her away from being at the school and wanting to be around, because she wasn't wanting to put up with that element, right? And for me, he just kind of left me alone. Besides, he probably thought, man, this kid's terrible. So I'm not going to worry too much about him. I'm just going to let him do his thing. And it kind of, for me, it just kind of happened that once it started to snowball for me, a couple things clicked and I kind of came into myself, and then it was just like, poosh. But then with my boys, like I said, I'm like telling them, man, I didn't get nothing. You guys are like, geez, if I had that much hardware hanging in my bedroom already at this young of an age, I'd be like,
how old are your boys?
Pumped. 9 and 10.
9 and 10.
Yeah. So, but they've now been competing now for a few years now.
Did you have to motivate them, or did they just have it in them?
It's kind of that same thing. There wasn't an option. We didn't have a conversation about, oh, hey, you guys got this tournament this weekend, we got to do this. And, do you want to try? Yeah, it wasn't that. I did do that with other sports. Yeah. Because that's the way it was for me, and I don't know if that's the best thing or the right thing to do. Yeah.
Didn't you have them in rugby for a bit?
Yeah, I signed them up for rugby, and that was kind of, I give those coaches, tip my hat to them, but they were like trying to herd chickens at that young age. Yes. It was not a lot of skill or organization, and I think up to this point in time, they were used to the martial arts school, and they're used to structure. Yeah. And so I think they had and then they did a stint of doing lacrosse, and they kind of liked that, but then also they kind of started that, I would say, late, because there were some kids in there that just were like, wow, I was impressed. I was like, obviously, your parent played lacrosse, because the way you're moving on the field, like everybody else is like a couple punching bags and you're just zigzagging through everybody. So I was pretty impressed with that. But it was kind of the same thing. I think they just didn't latch onto those things. And the other wasn't really an option. So I guess they've stuck with it. And I hope that, I told them I'm not trying to push them into anything, but I hope and I want them to stick with it at least until, you know, they're out of high school, and then they can decide what they want to do, right?
To follow up on Mike's question about that, we ask everyone, when did you know you couldn't turn it off? Yes, maybe, and I know the answer to this more, but yes, maybe you didn't have much of a choice. That was your lifestyle. But whether it was that, I know it happened at some point in your life, I don't know the answer to this, is when did it happen where you took it upon yourself to go above and beyond what your expectations from your dad were? Was it when you started winning and saying, okay, I'm going to put more time in at the school? But I know as your life story goes on, we'll learn about that you had far more instructors than just your dad.
Yeah. I think for myself, I found that, like, I was surrounded by such good martial artists. My dad produced a lot of really high-end competitors and martial artists. So I was surrounded. I was couldn't be happier. I had my dad as a teacher, but I probably learned just as much from all the other instructors, because everybody, it was kind of like I was raised by a tribe. It wasn't just one person that was inputting and ingraining. Everyone wanted to teach me something that they were good at, and I was like a sponge, so I sucked it up. I found I started to, it wasn't probably until really high school, I think, that it was kind of, once again, that was my second foray where I thought, oh, I'm going to go do football. Like everyone does football, go and do football. And being at the high school, we had a terrible football team. And
which high school was that?
Bedford Road.
Yeah.
When I was there, and it was just, it was rough. But the one thing I noticed, and I had my one science biology teacher, Mr. Cousins, who's a fairly well known.
Yeah, I think I might have had it too.
In the sports world, you know what I mean? Here in the city, as far as football, everything, he knows the stats. And I remember coming into class, and no one really knew. I didn't advertise that I did martial arts when I was in high school. I always kind of just kept it to myself. It wasn't, most people never ever put the name unless I was around if I went into a store and someone, or if I was doing something, they said, Scheer, oh, are you any relation to Dwight Scheer? And I'd be like, yeah, that's my dad. Huh. Okay. Then it would go from there. But no one else ever really knew that in high school. But Mr. Cousins, I remember he was following sports so much that my name was getting in the newspaper quite a bit when I was winning my different grand championships and stuff like that. Like, so he would be like, I'd walk into class and he'd be like, hey, congratulations on your wins today, Troy, and da-da-da-da. And I'll be like, thanks, Mr. Cousins. And I'd go and sit down and just I wanted to be anonymous, really, to be quite honest. Wow. That's just the way it was. And then people started asking, what's he talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And then that kind of got out. So by the time I think I was grade 10, I think pretty much everybody knew who I was and what I was doing. Right? And
not to mess with you.
How old were you when you got your black belt?
Well, you couldn't get your black belt back then until you were 16 years of age.
Oh, yeah.
And this
I was a brown belt for a really
karate?
long time.
Or judo? Or
I would call it martial arts for us, but it's like our brand of karate, I guess you could say, because my dad, we were doing mixed martial arts really before mixed martial arts.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, you were mixing ground and
everything. Right? Yeah, we were doing everything. But I mean, as far as the formal belt system, it was karate. Okay, like that's what it was always advertised as.
Yeah,
karate.
The advertising was karate.
Yeah, it was always karate. And that's kind of like where I did that, and then I think after high school, it just kind of clicked. Because I think I was surrounded by such good martial artists. It was hard though too, because you're constantly training with these people all the time, and it's like, okay, well, if I'm ever gonna have success against what I would call my seniors on the mat, and if I'm sparring with them all the time, I would absorb that data, but then I would have to be like, no, and that's kind of where I was. And now I hear the saying, it's more about the work that people don't see you doing that counts. And so, I mean, I had a key to the school. I'd go to the school on my own, and I would do stuff on my own, and I would just work on my own, and I would just do that, and then, you know, sooner or later it started showing, and then I started excelling in that, and then, you know, that's kind of where it took off, like competitively, where I started, you know, doing well even against the guys that I thought were.
You're a super humble guy.
Yeah.
Walk us through a few of the accomplishments that maybe you're most proud of or most kind of well known out there.
You know, for myself, for the martial arts, like, I mean, competed obviously provincially, nationally, internationally, probably was ranked highest for myself in what they call the Northwest Pacific with NASCA and the NBL, and that's like Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, Washington, and Oregon. Then the highest I ever got was like I was ranked third, which at that time, with everybody that's ranked, probably put me in the top 60 fighters in the world. Like I would say at that time.
So just on that question, I was trying to timestamp it. So at that time, 19.
That would have been like 2003, 2004 is when I started popping up in the magazines and actually getting my my status on that. And then
Which discipline?
that was
Yours.
point fighting and light kickboxing, right? Or continuous kickboxing, they called it at that time.
So that's, and I'm also timestamping, that's roughly 10 years after the first UFC. Your first UFC was in the early 90s.
Yeah, 93 or 91.
They just had their, how come I can't do the math on this, 40th? So based
I
on
don't
it?
know.
Can't be the 30th.
Yeah.
So the point is, you reach this level 10 years after that sport starts to kind of become something. And so where I was going to go is, by that time it had gone from kind of almost like the cockfighting reputation on the reserves, right? And all that. That's how it first started.
Yeah.
But by that time, I'm thinking now, like George St. Pierre is probably
A little bit more mainstream.
just coming on. So
Yeah.
when you were at that
It came on like actually quite a bit after I even stopped competing.
okay, because who were your role models at that time, aside from the people in your gym and dojo? Like, I mean, who are you looking at? Maybe in the UFC or elsewhere in other locations?
The UFC was kind of like at that time was still kind of like
Just a brawling pitch.
I guess, yeah, it was like, obviously I was intrigued with the Gracies because that was kind of the new thing, and that was really a package with the UFC, and just seeing how well these other guys are going to do against them, right? Like, how are they going to do anything with that?
It was really style versus style back then.
It literally was, and I think it changed fairly fast with that. I never really had, I think, like a window where I kind of went, oh, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to try doing MMA, because there was nothing organized. You know, I think I remember the first kind of underground one they did here in Saskatoon. They had slated for 5 fights, and I think there was maybe 3 fights that ever made it, and it didn't last longer than a minute and a half. Like, one guy literally stepped up there, went to throw a punch, and blew his knee out. And he's one of the referees in the UFC now.
Really?
Yeah, you'll see him all the time in the UFC. His name was Jared Villel, and he was, very accomplished. Later on, was a very accomplished martial artist, and even at that time, he was probably, I would probably consider but he was like maybe 145 pounds if he was lucky. But now when you see him, he does a lot of the big events as the center referee. Oh. And he probably ate 3 of himself since then. Like, I mean, he's a way bigger guy now. You know what I mean? But, like, that was kind of neat. But there was no safety things. There was no, anything. And at that time, I was just like, I was starting to train it and play at it and do that stuff. And I started kind of doing more so where I was traveling, and because that was kind of after a while, as my dad was saying, it's like, okay, well, why don't you go start learning other things? Like, you're already got what you got here. Now you should go and learn some more. So then I started going down to Vegas. Was kind of my first hot spot that I went. And being in Vegas, I went there. I was originally starting Muay Thai with Master Toddy. And because you had a camp there, you just lived at the camp with all the TIE fighters, and it was every morning you got up, you had to do your run, you got to come back. They would put you through your paces, trained all day, and then it was like, okay, now you have the afternoon to go do what you want, which usually was sleep.
Recover.
I was too young to go to the casino or anything at night, so
you were under 21?
yeah, I think I was like about 19, 20 when I went there, started going there.
What an experience.
And so I just
Oh,
established a really good relationship with him. You know, that's where I was going. And then there was all these other guys that was like, say, Jonathan Lewis ran a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu club there. And he wasn't in the UFC initially, but he was in I guess you could say the counter. At that time, they had a thing called Battlecade, Extreme Fighting. And he fought on that and fought actually the team that I'm now a part of is Carlson Gracie Jr. He fought Carlson Sr.'s son, Carlson Gracie Jr. And because of Jonathan Lewis, that's why you're not allowed to hold the fence. You can't do, but because he was tall, super athletic guy, Junior was trying to take him down, but he would just be able to hold the fence. Like he could tall enough that he just hung his arm over the fence.
Oh, like over the back of it?
Yeah, he
wow.
just hung it. And so he was like, you can't get me, and then I'm just going to hit you.
Wow.
So it caused a lot of dynamics that
I've never been able to do that.
yeah. the Battlecade fence was a little bit shorter though.
Even
was
in
a
a
little
ring,
bit
I'd have a
shorter.
hard time reaching it.
Yeah. It's a little bit shorter than what they have now. But like a lot of things changed from then. But I would go on my off days from Master Toddy's. If I had downtime, I'd go. That's when I'd start doing jiu-jitsu there. Because initially I first started off, I think my first jiu-jitsu seminar I went to was in Toronto, and they had Royce Gracie was there, and it was right after UFC 3 where he had to quit, and he fought.
Chemo.
Yeah, and no, because there was the big Canadian with the mullet, and his moniker was he was the one who made him quit, but he fought chemo. That's correct.
I thought he was gassed after.
He was gassed and he couldn't come back out, so he didn't return. And so then it was the name
Paul?
no, it wasn't Paul. It was another.
I can
gentleman.
envision him, but I can never remember that guy's
He
name.
was he almost seemed like a pro wrestler. He had a big blonde mullet, big guy, and I remember going to the seminar though, and he was literally having people hand out, come train with the man that's made Royce Gracie stop. Right?
Wow.
And they were handing these things out at the Royce Gracie seminar that I went to.
Wow.
But then I was at the seminar, and that time now I realized back then that I was rubbing elbows with a lot of guys that were like Carlos Newton, who was later the middleweight champion for the UFC. He was like a brown belt. There was Joel Gerson, who was basically really another Canadian grappler who came up with Carlos Newton, was fighting in Pride and Shudo out in Japan and beating guys like with Rumio Sato, who was like one of Japan's superstars, and he beat him and stuff like that. So there was like all these guys were just coming up. The two brothers, you probably always see the Gracie breakdown. Both of those brothers, Henner and I can't remember the other brother's name. There's too many R's in the family.
Yeah.
They were like 10 and 12, running around causing chaos and getting into trouble, and Horion was like ordering them around, and that's where it was kind of like, for me at that point, it was like, this is really cool. I really enjoyed the vibe there. And I remember we were having a lunch break, and Royce is standing there, and this guy obviously doesn't care about people's space. He slaps Royce in the chest and goes, "So, who would you consider to be the toughest guy in the family?" and Royce kind of looked at him, and I was just waiting, like, me and my buddy were looking at him like, oh my God, like, did he just like do that?
Well, it's an inappropriate question and an inappropriate.
But the
Everything
slap
was
him, it was
inappropriate.
it just was so out of whack. And Royce said, like, Hickson,
Yeah.
my older brother Hickson, he's like, he beats everyone in the family. And I heard that. And then after that seminar, I was like, who's this Hickson guy? And then I found out that he was supposed to be in the UFCs, but they didn't pick him because he was
Too
athletic.
big.
Looked like he would win, right? Very athletic, most technical family member, basically. And Royce looked like the scrawny kid
Yeah.
that would market the product the best. So then I found out where Hickson was, and then same thing. It was like me and my buddy. I was like, we're gonna drive down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're gonna go do a seminar
No shit.
at with Hickson Gracie. That was during the Olympics, so they ran the torch through Charlotte on the way to Atlanta.
This is a 4?
Yeah, I think it was the '84 Olympics, right? So hence, no, that was the year before, I think, when Roy Jones Jr. lost the gold medal because the Korean athlete sat down in the middle of the ring and would not fight, and then protested, so they just gave him the gold medal, because that's why Roy Jones Jr. didn't have a gold medal.
Oh, yeah.
But so we were there. I went there, and that was the first seminar I went to Hicks on, and I was blown away by his, like, I mean, it was totally different. Like, it was a different level. Like, he, at the end of the seminar, I remember him, like, rolling with everybody. And there was over 100 people there.
I read his book. Is it Breathe? Warrior
There's Breathe, and then there's another, and he's got another one
Is
out
there?
now, which
Yeah.
is a lot of rehash stuff from Breathe, though.
Is it?
So, but very good book.
He's the real deal, eh?
Yeah, no, he was awesome, and that was the thing. Like, I remember being there, and we were doing a bunch of free rolling and stuff like that, and he came up. He was with me, and I was there with Murray Deese, actually, who's just come back and started training at the school a couple of years ago now, and he was like, "Oh, are you coming to testing tomorrow?" And I'm like, "I don't know," because I wasn't part of his association. He goes, "Yeah, you're good. You should go talk to Cheryl over there." And I went over there. Hickson told me to come talk about testing, and
He actually...
yeah, he told me to go and go and talk.
Did
to
you
her.
roll with him? Did you roll with Hickson?
Well, I don't call it rolling. He played with me a little, and
No, but this is... I mean, for those... I have to interject. For those
Hickson Gracie's.
Yeah, I mean, for those that don't understand, the way I have to tell this to some people maybe from this area, this would be like having a guest on here that was a hockey player that was at an age where they played, I don't know, with Wayne Gretzky or something, kind of one-on-one when Wayne Gretzky was known, but not like you're talking top food chain stuff in the world, who sparked a whole movement of what now we all know as a sport.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, we're super lucky to have you, like, I'm talking Saskatoon and Saskatchewan, to have you and your family. Like, it is so deeply connected to that. Like,
yeah.
it's awesome, eh?
Yeah,
Like, it proves my whole point, is that for people that are wired like this, it's not like you have to be in the big cities, New York. Like, that's not how this works. It works where you're that kind of person no matter where you are, and these connections through the energy and the passion.
Yeah.
Like, you're a young teenager, early 20s, with probably not a lot of money, right? Like, but I don't know how you're even getting around, if you're driving or flying, and you're making an effort to go to these things.
Yeah.
And now this has turned into a multi-billion-dollar activity.
Yeah.
And you were right at the genesis of it.
Yeah.
Like,
It
that's nuts.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's neat listening to because like I told you, I'm more of an audiobook guy, so I didn't read any of this stuff. But it was really cool listening to the audiobook, because like I said, after that, when I was in Charlotte, he invited me. So I went to their affiliates club. I was a white belt because I had no rank in jiu-jitsu.
How did the
I've
test
been doing judo with my instructor here. Alfie used to have a judo club at the Broadway location that they come and they train a few nights.
That's what I was going to get. You weren't green with jiu-jitsu.
No,
You were
but I had been
totally
grappling
green, but-
because of my dad made it a part of the program, right? We did do it in the higher ranks, and then so then we had the judo, which was even better yet, because then we got to learn some actual stuff. So I was like, okay, cool. So I went to that test, and at the end of the test, I was like blown away. And now I look at it, how much of because he promoted me right to my blue belt. I was not the most popular guy on the test. I will be honest about that, because like
People are like,
they were
"What
all
the hell?"
they all knew each other. They're from his association club, and they had all been
this
training
is
together. And
epic.
here's this stranger coming out, and then okay, well now he wants you to
we've done our demonstration of the techniques. Now
It's
he wants you to
crazy.
fight, right? He wants you to do your randori, and you know what I mean. And so I did it, but I'm like, I go into competition mode, and so I'm just like
Dialed.
dumping guys and just doing, and then I'm getting, guys are getting pissed off at me. And then at the end, he was like, you kind of had to soften things, but he said, this is why you guys got to focus, and and it was just like, but then after, he was like, you got to work on this. You're really good on the top game, but your game off your back is kind of weak. So you got to improve that, and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, okay, I'm just taking these notes down in my head. I came back and I worked like my ass off, like at home, just working. And I'm just doing things from watching like UFCs, right? Because even then it was like hard. If you could get a videotape of an instructional or something that, you would use that to some degree.
Was the internet even up then? I don't know. Was it?
Barely.
Barely, right?
Barely, but there was nothing. There wasn't like
There's
Or
no
some
any
tutorials,
stuff.
yeah.
There's
there wasn't
anyway.
nothing. Not like you have now.
Yeah. Jesus.
So then I went back, and then that's when I started training at the legendary gym in Santa Monica,
Yeah, it's the
where
one.
I had to go and find this place. And I'm looking, and I got the address, and I'm like, where is this place? Is this number? And then you look, and there's this alley, and at the end of the alley, there's a bunch of Hispanic grease monkeys, pardon the term, but it just looks like, and they're chopping cars. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And I'm walking down this long alley, and it's like a slope down to, and I got pictures and stuff. It's crazy after. And it's like something, I think it was West LA Karate Club or something like that they had on the wall. And I was like looking, and one of the guys there, one of the mechanics goes, oh, you looking for the jiu-jitsu? And I was about to do it in my voice, but and I was like, yeah, and he goes, yeah, it's in there. So I got in there, and there was just one of the other instructors, Leon, to call him, like Lenin, and Luis Herrera, and that was the first instructor that I met there. And he goes, oh yeah, class will be starting at this time. And then just after a bit, then Hickson rolled up with the entourage, and then him and his wife, because there was only one bathroom in this place, and it was like pigeons flying around in there and everything else. So if you ever see the movie, there's like a documentary called Choke, and it shows that dojo. This was kind of in that genre of that time. Like I was there sometimes when they had things were going on for that, where they were prepping for that, and so it was kind of like really cool to be there on the mats. And I remember seeing like having these teams that were coming down to Brazil, because if you were coming from Brazil, everyone wanted to train with Hickson, right? So you'd get all these different guests come on the mat and training with us while we were there. And I remember going there, and like I said, I went for a few weeks, and I was just like, I was staying at this shady little hotel, like it got bars on the window and the band, and I'm like, well, so these are going to help. Like I can basically crawl in here if I don't have it. It was just like a few blocks away, but it made it easy for me to get to and from the studio, because I'm like, at night, I'm like, frick, I don't know anything. I'm in LA here. This is kind of scary for me. So that was a big process for me to kind of absorb that. And then I ended up same thing. I was blessed that, even after and I was done there, Luis Herrera, who was a Hickson's senior guy there, he promoted me again. He gave me a stripe. He was like, and I was like, really? Like I just got, and he goes, I have permission. That's all he said to me. Like don't question what I'm doing, basically, right? And I was just like, okay, I'm not saying nothing. And then like that's where I was going. So I was coming back and training there, and I was looking to, initially I wanted to affiliate, but it was getting, when I would start to come back successive times after, Hickson started teaching less and less at that facility, because by that time, I think it was like one of the band members from Megadeth had encouraged him, because he was one of his private students, to open up a studio in the Pacific Palisades.
Oh, wow.
So he opened up a studio there. So now he had all these
Spread out.
big wigs coming to him, and now to go to and you couldn't go there, like it was by invitation only, and it was like all his high-end clients there. So nothing against any of the other instructors. All Hickson's instructors were all great, but I was traveling all that way to train with him. Like that was my goal. So it was just started to get like a little bit, and then I heard about a seminar happening in
Edmonton, and that's when I met my current instructor, Marcus Torres. He was also like I think about a 5th degree at that time, but he was like a general for Carlson Gracie and Carlson Gracie Sr. He used to be one of his top trainers in Copacabana in Brazil. And I was like, oh wow, like that's probably my favorite team, because they were the ones that were all fighting in the Extreme Battle Cape. They weren't in the UFC. They were in this other event. And that's where it was all his fighters, like Mario the Zen Machine Sperry. So it was all these guys that weren't Gracies. Then that's what Carlson was known for, was basically taking anybody who wasn't a Gracie and making them like a world champion.
Yeah.
Which made him the black sheep of the Gracie family. But that's how I was really drawn. So when I seen that Marcus was going to Edmonton, I'm like, grab one of my black belts. I don't know if you remember Rick Doring.
Yep.
So Rick Doring says, yeah, let's go. So we drove down there and went and did this seminar, and I was like, oh, this is great. Totally different than Hickson style. Hickson style was very flowy and very smooth, and this style was really top heavy and, you know, really good heavy game. And so it was good. It was kind of neat contrast. And I think it was like literally about 2 weeks later, after that seminar, I got a call from his Liam, because he was still trying to become a Canadian citizen at that time.
Huh.
And I got a call from his kind of, I guess, lawyer that he was working with at that time / student. And they asked me, hey, do you want to become a representative for Marcus? Right? He was impressed with how you moved and everything else. He said, like, you know, it was good. So I was like, and you're going to be living in Vancouver? And that's like, I'm there. As much as it was, I just knew that my window to train with Hickson continually was shrinking away to nil and void. So, and I mean, he had however many students, right? I was probably just a rare blip on the radar. But
were you
Marcus,
just
then I was with him.
competing at this time, or were you thinking of expanding your skill set, your portfolio, so you could bring it back?
That was primarily, and that's what was
Okay.
my dad's plan, right? Like that's why he sent me and said, "Hey, go do this stuff, go learn more stuff," because he was always that way, right?
Yeah.
Like that was his. Like he started off
Very
with,
visionary. Like,
you know,
It's crazy.
Most people would just fall into, oh, I've got this great little business, and I think this speaks to
But
you know,
even
how
if you-
forward thinking.
even if you talk to my dad, it was kind of like, oh, you see a scrap, you go, oh, that was a neat trick. I like that. So then he would be like, I'm going to learn that. That's a new tool.
Yeah.
And it would be constantly, you're always adding to your toolbox kind of idea,
Well, then,
right?
if you don't, so we went to Thailand. I don't know, it was like 2010 or something like that. I know you went a couple times. I just went once with the group, and it was 3 weeks, and we trained 2 hours a day, twice a day for 6 days. Take a day off, move to a new island, and do it again. Move to an island, do it again. And Troy participated in a lot of the instruction, and we were buddies then. Like we had been buddies for a very long time, but I remember I was wondering, like we were all kind of grinding, but he wasn't grinding. And to his credit, at the time though, I was like, man, like we're here, let's go. But you think about his life and how many kicks, how many punches, how much of this stuff he's seen, and I don't think that was your first time there. But he never missed a single training session, and he was sitting and watching and watching and watching. But you were looking for that trick, the thing. And then when we come home, you know, it's like, well, you know, we all were putting in our 4 hours a day, and you said what? But then we come home. Well, the instruction out of him was like all 3 of the different places we were at.
Wow.
And the whole school got all that, right?
So it's
So
like
it was
a
like
sponge
the
on
ability
everything.
to teach, which is like your dad and you are the only guys I know that can. I had a skydiving instructor that was close, but your ability to pass on the way to properly do a task in any form is just, that alone is here. And then you add your skill with martial arts to it is amazing.
Wow.
You obviously work at it, but I think there's a lot of natural
Yeah,
talent with it as well.
That was even kind of going way back to your question about my accolades. And to me, my accolades weren't the important ones.
Mm-hmm.
I got way more out of seeing my athletes and putting everything back. Because I had to stop competing. I had both of my orbitals and sinuses cracked multiple times, and doctor said probably shouldn't be getting hit anymore. Right?
He said, turn it off. Your doctor told you to turn it off.
The doctor was telling me to turn it off. So that's when I kind of got a little bit more
Had those
into
conversations.
doing into jiu-jitsu. But I, at that time, also then was starting to train fighters because people came to me and said, well, I want to fight.
Yeah.
I want to do Thai boxing. I want to do this. So then I was like, okay. And now I was teaching the good majority of the classes when I was at the school, started getting my input, and I was just kind of doing that full time. And then, but then when I started training the other athletes, and then I got way more of a rush seeing them win a title or seeing them win their first fight, even you know what I mean? Because they're just vibing, and you'd seen the work that they put in. And I know for a fact, because I usually make people work, because that's what I was surrounded by, right? It wasn't going to be like, hey, I show up a couple times a week and you're going to get somewhere. No, like, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it all the way. Yeah. And then you can't complain about the end results, right? Win, lose, or draw. You won't be upset about the end results in most cases, because you know you put your soul, everything into it. You can't control 100% of everything after you get in there, but you know at least that you prepared yourself, honestly, and that and yet as time went on, and that's where we were kind of talking about
that's an amazing
legacy
message
book.
To pass down to people, is that there's no downside to that work ethic that you're putting into something.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Like, there's no regrets on putting in that much effort, and you get to the event or whatever, and you may not win, but you know that you've given it your all to get there.
No, you didn't miss any reps. No,
you didn't lose any sleep.
You didn't lose any sleep over missing the reps because you put in the work. But it's like some of this stuff, and this is not probably unique to your school, but the team training, when we say sharpen steel, but getting ready for a fight. So I only fought amateur, and there was lots of pros that I got to sharpen myself with. But you do a 5-minute round. I think sometimes you put us in longer, but so whoever's fighting goes up against everybody else with, like, you get a fresh person every
the
30 minutes.
Shark Tank.
And so we're in the Shark Tank, and it's like you got 5 minutes with every minute, and there's a new fresh guy, and then I get a minute break, and then we go, or whoever's fighting, right? I was the fresh guy many times as well, but like that's the kind of stuff when you're done, you're just like, I don't care who I'm gonna be standing across from, when I can do that with Jose and Warren and Scotty and all the guys coming at you. You're like, I feel bad for the guy who's got to stand there with me for 5 minutes.
Yeah. And that was the thing. Like, that's what I came up with, and that's what I was around. Like, I was lucky enough, I think, that because I absorbed, I'm a very visual learner, right? And then from the visual comes the kinetic, where I'm able to repeat it really fast. I found that when I'd go places that, after a while, like we said, we were in Thailand, there were days that the Thai trainers were having me teach stuff. I was teaching class. You know what I mean? And, like, you'd go places and there would be people, oh, well, I think he's a pro fighter. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. I've never fought pro. And they wouldn't believe me, right? And I had that lots. But then it opened up a lot of doors where I got to rub elbows and train with those high-end fighters, whether they were glory kickboxing level guys. Like when I went to Holland, I was training with a lot of really high-level guys and stuff like that. And it was just like, you absorb so much, and then it's just like, oh, this is the golden nugget that I'm going to take back and I'm going to implement in my program. And I kind of just kept doing that. Now you see a lot of clubs, they're just starting to do that. So we were so far ahead of the loop, but it's good now. But there's the martial arts level across the board everywhere is getting better, and that's awesome, because it just forces you to have to push a little bit harder. We were talking about the legacy book, and I've been going through that.
Yeah, you got to the audiobook?
Yeah,
All the
so
way?
I'm not all the way yet,
Almost.
but already to
Okay.
a certain point, because I took that originally, like I was mentioning, that I follow rugby now, but I didn't, and I wish I had earlier. I wish I was exposed to it earlier. But I kind of just stumbled on the All Blacks, and it was probably in like a Sports Illustrated article or something, and they were talking about them being the most winningest team and so much about the culture. And then I started looking into it more, and then once I saw the haka, then I was hooked, because it was just attached to my I guess, I don't know if you call it the warrior mentality of what your focus is, and just their process and how they have their pillars and how they do everything and each assignment and how no one is special, everyone's even, you know what I mean? And I kind of was like, okay, when I develop my fight team, that's what it's going to be like. Like, that's what I want, right? Everyone, no one's more special than the other. Nobody, takes precedent over anybody. When someone's fighting, that's the most special person in the room for everybody. If you're not fighting, you're still coming and you're still contributing because they're going to be there for you. Now, granted, over the years, that sometimes goes in ebb and flows, and you get the odd individual or individuals, and then it's just like, okay, you just don't fit the culture anymore. So then you gotta move on, right? But I find that is more, and no offense to my MMA athletes, but that happens more with the MMA athletes than it does with like Thai boxing athletes, or because I think there's more of a traditional.
They're glory seekers, or just a different mentality.
No, I think a lot of times. Well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that. I mean, it's addictive. I'm sure. Like, you get a lot of attention once you're doing well and you're moving through. Like, but I think they all. I don't know. I always look at it as like, okay, well, good. You got it to here. You're not here. Don't fool yourself. You're here. But if you want to get to there, we could get you there.
Yeah.
But you got to do this, this, and this. And I think a lot of people are not of that mentality. Yeah. And they're just happy to float around in this little minor celebrity zone, which to me is the last thing you should worry about.
It's crazy,
right?
You see that in any sport that you play and come up in. I'm sure we've all experienced it, where you think you're pretty good, and then you go on to maybe the next level, and you're like, wow, like I'm way out of my league
So
now.
traveling,
and it
gets
pushes
us out
you
of that,
more, right?
You get exposed to that, and that's the thing too. Like, one of my instructors is Duke Rufus, who has Rufus Sport down in Milwaukee, and so I take my team there when I get a good group of guys. I've taken them and say, okay, well, it's a little closer than going to Thailand. We can go for a shorter stint and go down there. We can go train, and you can go train with the fight team. So you'd be rubbing elbows with like Anthony Pettis or Sergio, his brother, or at that time, like, there was a lot more fighters. Right now, he's on a kind of a low point in the sense where he doesn't have as many UFC guys right now, but he's got the one guy, this Rodriguez kid. He is good, and it just seems like it's this ripple effect. But you go down there, you get to see how that team runs, you get to see how they build their culture. And that's the biggest thing is you got to find the culture that works. I think if you find the right culture, I think you can excel anywhere, right? But you have to bend to that culture or take it in. Like, I mean, heck, if I got to be the water boy for the All Blacks, I would just be taking it and I'd be like doing the hawk on the side. Like, cause I mean, it just, to me, I get goosebumps anytime I hear it. Just right? They just automatically, like, that is what it's about, like that energy. Yeah. And like I said, I just absorbed that as much as I could, and I probably hadn't even watched a game.
Yeah.
But it was all the other stuff that I was more impressed with. And now I'm watching the games, and now I see how, like, oh, now I know what they're talking about. Like, these guys are phenomenal athletes. Next to MMA fighters, I would say, pound for pound, the most athletic individuals on the planet. If not, maybe even more than some MMA fighters. That's why a lot of them are now moving over into MMA when they no longer can play the rugby. You look at Volkanovski. Guy used to be like 235 pounds and he 145 champ.
Yeah, he and I always joke, but that's, I mean, I'm not saying I'm even remotely, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, but physically, we're the same stature.
Yeah. So
he and I played the same position. So he was up to about 220, 100 kilos, right? And then he's come all the way down. Yeah. And I remember when he showed up, and I said to people, I said, you watch this guy, because his athleticism was apparent. I said, but the difference is, and this is an interesting part of how you transition from that sport. I said, that guy, he's like a midget. He's like me. So he's been used to playing with guys that are 6 foot, whatever, 250, 275. Like he's taken them on no problem. The idea that he's going to go in now against someone his height at 145,
Yeah.
there's 100 pounds lighter than what he's normally throwing around.
Yeah.
And he's learned skills. I said, this guy's confidence just as an athlete is off the chart. And you could see that. Yeah. And also I think that sport transitioned really well, the discipline and the structure from the sport to the training, because he loves to train, right?
Absolutely. And I think the mentality, the toughness and the mentality that you get, that you have to be able to transition.
Yeah.
Like, I think playing rugby is a tough sport. Like, I mean, if you took a room of rugby players and took a room of like MMA fighters, you couldn't pick the cauliflower out from either who was who, right? And that's a big thing. Like, it's a grinding, tough sport that builds that mental toughness. Yeah. And that kind of, like, I think to get to a high level, which he was. Yeah. And then to transition over, like, I mean, like you said, it's like, this is nothing. Like, I'm used to having these monsters, drag me down and do that, right? Or vice versa. Yeah. I'm not sure which position he played. I can't remember.
He played hooker, but he played league mostly, I believe. So it was like the real crash and bang. Yeah. But like I kind of go back to what Mike was alluding to, and Jay, you'd said it too. But I think in our group here, we recognize what you are talking about, and I think you recognize what you're talking about. But I think I just want to emphasize your success. As you said, right? It's not about what you achieved as a competitor or even as a coach and all this, right? But like it's the mindset that somehow your dad had this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, your dad is literally an old guard athlete at the highest level in terms of longevity. Like, he's never turned it off. He
still teaches every Saturday.
I see him. He's in there, and he's such a humble guy. And I'm like, every time I'm just in awe. Because how old is he now?
79.
Yeah, he's he's literally in the gym. And the classic is he's in there and he's wearing, I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of it, but I mean, it's unique, right? His belt is quite tattered, and
it's like a white belt. It's been so worn.
Yeah, right. Like, and I mean, this is like the ultimate killer of the whole place. Everyone else has got like stripes and trying to, and this guy's just,
it's worn off.
Yeah, no, he's just calmly walking through. But I think what it just reminds me of when we come across people like you, it's special, because everything that you've done to get to your age at 53, and you're still going. Like, you're not, like, this is going to be till the wheels fall off, like right to the last breath.
They've been falling off.
They fall off, and then you put them back on and you adjust, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, but this mindset has allowed so many other people in the world to benefit, right? Like, if somebody pioneers that, does all these treks and these different things and these alleys and and because it's ingrained and it's so wired in, you're doing the same, you've done the same, there's a trail of community that's left from people like that, right? Yeah. And it's weird, but until we kind of started talking amongst ourselves, it felt like a really lonely, at least for me, journey, because it's in your head, you're like, fuck, I'm the only person that is, like you said, like absorbing everything that you've done, right? You're just processing, and you're pulling these, to everyone else, it's random stuff together. Yeah. And then when you tell the story like this, it's like, oh, fuck, this guy's just like Greg Jackson or Zahav, right? Like, no, I mean, it's a neural network of a world that you've pulled together. Yeah. I wanted to come back to that point, because
I want to double click on another thing too you've mentioned, and you've talked about culture. And culture, I think, is a really, like, it interests me because I'm in the corporate world. Yeah. You come from the corporate world, and corporate culture is so important. Is culture something that you think about and, I'm going to develop this and reposition the culture, or does it just naturally happen by how you lead? And if you have, just a follow on to that, and if you have some bad culture within your dojo, how do you weed that out?
Good question. I think initially I didn't identify it, but it was there, because we definitely have a culture at our club. Yeah. Because I would identify, as soon as I'd go somewhere else, I'd either go
You could feel
this,
it.
yeah, I feel this club, or I feel this vibe, and I could mesh because I identified the culture, and I could blend in right away and absorb what there was, right? But I didn't really start hearing too much about the culture as far as it actually having a label as far as teams and stuff until I was exposed to that article.
Yeah.
And then later on, really with my coach, Duke Rufus, because he was very much about the culture, like, and maintaining a certain culture. And I remember certain things had even changed with the culture, because we were there, and when I'd go down and train, we would kind of have our ends kind of huddle and everyone gets together. And then the last couple times was when I was there, because it's been a while now that I've been back. It was when Tyrone Woodley was the champ, and he was doing all his stuff with, like, he's part of Rufus Sport at that time, was doing a lot of striking and everything, but he had brought and added to the culture. And it was like they had kind of this chanting thing, and it was just like, oh, this is kind of different. I kind of like this. But it was just like this huddle, and it was just like everybody just starts. You have like 30 guys at the end of fight team training, and they're all just like, boom, you know, they don't want what I got. And then everybody would rifle off, like, right back. And they would have this little chant, right? And it was cool. It kind of gave you, you were bagged, but then you left with an energy, right? So I thought that was kind of cool. But I think it took a special person to inject that into a culture that was already there, right? With Tyrone, I think because of his status as being a champion and everything else, and his personality and so forth, I think that's what made it effective.
Awesome.
For me to turn around and come back to the gym and tell everybody, okay, we're gonna start chanting, we're gonna start doing this, they would probably look at me and go, yeah, okay, you've been dipping into something here a little bit. So I think it has to be either organic or it has to have an influence from somewhere.
Your schools I think it evolves the culture. Like, my perspective as a student, the first ring shark team, those days, 03, 02, 03, 04, 05.
You were part of that generation.
So yeah, and that, like that, you were very much. We all trained together, and we were all socializing together too. And that was, I don't think you were cultivating the culture, and you don't. It's easier to see it in hindsight than when you're in it at the time. But I just think back of the best times I've had just doing anything, and it was like we all worked like hell, and then we all played pretty good, and a lot of us were really close friends. I mean, you were close friends with us. I was close friends with you, and with some of that, there was a culture there that just happened organically. And then and I've been away, and as I've aged, and our kids are not that far off in age, and that socializing, there's still a great culture, and you're part of that. But it's been, I feel in a way, just even being back, a little bit of jiu-jitsu I was doing, it's like the guys that you have there, Jason, Jesse, and sorry guys, there's a bunch of other Mike. Those guys aren't there in leadership roles by accident. I mean, those are guys they put in the work and earned it, but they're also in leadership roles because I think you've identified that this is what I want the culture to be. These are the guys that I want being here. And I don't know how much thought. I know you put a lot of thought into everything else. I don't know how much you put in, but it's a way different feel. One of the things that I've noticed, and I don't know if maybe in your head not to name, but I just don't remember a time and again, just for listeners, I've been part of the martial arts school starting back when I was 10, but I've been gone and back and gone and back and gone and back. There's never really been, I don't remember too many like assholes in the school. Like, they just don't last. And I don't know if that's in all martial arts schools, but if you show up and you start kicking newbies a little hard, if whatever, like, things don't go nicely for you because of the people. I mean, you explain it better when you're listening to me. Sense. But that there just never has. I don't remember like a guy where I was like, oh yeah, man, remember I hated. And this guy wasn't an asshole, but Travis Bruner just hurt people because of his size. It wasn't his fault, but just sparring with him was brutal. But he wasn't intentionally doing that. Sorry, Travis, I didn't throw that out. Because he's just tall and hurt my legs. But
we,
there's
we just lost a potential follower.
yeah, he'll be laughing.
No, I think definitely the culture has evolved, it's changed a little bit. But you have kind of different mini cultures within the overall body, right? Because I mean, the guys that you're talking about is the culture is the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu culture that's at our club, and then we have the MMA group. They have a separate culture in a sense of guys in groups, and yet they all interweave with each other, right? Because they're doing all the skill sets.
Well, and the kickboxing,
and then
too,
you have
right?
the kickboxers,
Yeah.
the people that are just strictly doing kickboxing. But then you have the families and friends and the parents, and they come out and watch the events, and they're doing so that's to me, that's kind of like the ultimate culture. Like for a while there, I think I used to get really wrapped up with, because that was the fun part for me, was going to the fights and just dealing with the fighters and everything. But now I realize that I enjoy, probably if you had to ask me what was my most favorite class to teach, it's going to be, I love teaching kids. I love teaching the young kids because they're just,
so eager to learn.
Probably because when I say bad jokes, they don't get them anyhow, so I get away with it. But I love teaching the kids. But to be quite honest, there's not really a class I don't like teaching. As long as people come and they're enthusiastic about learning, I leave and I go home and I'm buzzing, even if I can barely walk, right? I just feel energized from that. And I know when we were talking about when did you know, when did you do this? I remember at one point in time I had to make a life choice, martial arts. I don't know, Dad, if this is going to be something that I can make a living off of, and then I was looking to become a police officer. I was I've got all these skills.
Yeah.
I might as well, maybe I could go do something like that. And I was applying and everything. And he pulled me aside and said, things are going kind of good. I think this is what you should do, right? And you're good at it, so why don't you just keep doing that? And that was kind of that was the change that I kind of went from being that competitor to being, now I've got to help steer the ship. Yeah. And then after a while, it was hey, I want to buy this ship.
this is the legacy piece now.
Yeah. So then that's where I was okay. So now then I took over the club, and so now I've had it now for about 15 years, and that's when I went and bought that monstrous Noah's Ark there that I had to
30,000
fill up.
square feet.
Yeah, that I had to fill up. You know what I mean? And it was just my dad. He's just nowadays when we talk, he goes, "Man, I can't." You had such aspirations with this place, and it's just I think that's why he likes going, and because on Saturday there's so much energy in the building. When you walk in there, there's it's just moving nonstop, and that's the day I usually don't go because it's just, to me, it's just overload, because I have to stop and talk to too many people, and I can never get anything done because I love socializing with the students and stuff like that, and I hate being short with anybody. So I find the weeknights are actually a little bit because I'm already on the mat. So if I'm already on the mat, I'm just socializing with those people that are on the mat, and then I got to quickly boot over to the other mat if I'm going from a Thai boxing class to a jiu-jitsu class, or bouncing around from place to place. But that's, if anything, that's what keeps me doing it. When I'm listening to you guys, like we were talking about biking, how many, I don't want to do that. That's and then to be setting a goal and you're gonna beat the goal, and Jay's always been like that, and that's what I love that about him.
So you just verified that he's in this. Yeah, he's in this group for real. Than just by saying.
Oh yeah, no. To me though, I'd be honest with anybody. I'd say I'm lazy. I'm not gonna do all that work. If I can figure out a path to get to the end before everybody else, I'll do that, because I have to show all these people.
But this is so just mindful of our time, because we have a technology issue here where we have limited recording.
Absolutely.
So, but this is get the premium plan.
Exactly right. But this is the perfect segue to kind of wrap it all up, because the three of us, you're a business owner, so this is kind of a nice tie-in. But you're not a business owner in the athletic sense. You have businesses, entrepreneurship, and then you right. So we're three athletes, business owner, entrepreneur. Same, but this is the point that maybe we in some athletic way are kind of still grinding it out, right? Some more than others. And then you've said, no, like from an athletic pursuit perspective, till the wheels fall off, you're just shifting. Like my orbital bones are broken. I can't, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But you're taking all that and you're putting it into the legacy, like you into the next generation of what this place looks like. So the passion is the same. It's built off of all the physical work, the mental, the emotional, everything. And I think that's really, really cool because there's a lot of people that are told when it comes to athletics, don't mesh athletics with business. It can't, right? Like you don't turn your passion into work because then it's going to die out. And I hear that and I go, I get it. I get it for the people that aren't wired this way. If you're wired this way, exactly, right? No, this is the point. But you have to be hardwired this way because it's not work, right? You've literally just gone through the entire 53 years.
Have you ever felt like you worked a day in your life?
Oh, my body does.
Hey, don't discount. He's being a bit humble.
No,
teaching he's got physical classes that aren't martial arts that he teaches, and I know he tailors them just so that he can teach all the stuff he can do with his injuries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm teasing a little bit, but you're personally doing that stuff. So
I to be clear,
I know
totally
you're
agree.
saying.
Yeah, it's just you are 100% still active physically, but now you've gone to a level that very few people have been able to achieve, and you're second generation.
Yeah.
So I just thought that'd be a great way to wrap this up because it's so unique and it sets the stage for lots of people that might listen to this that are young.
Yeah.
Right. You got your kids coming up. I got 2 boys, and I sometimes I wonder if like they're talking about their passion in athletics, perhaps, and can you make it into a profession? Yeah. So how do you, now that you've got this responsibility and you've earned it, your dad's passed it to you, you're trying to pass it on. Like, what do you see for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And you talked about succession. I'm meeting some of these people because I'm a student there.
Yep, absolutely.
And I agree with Jay. Like you've done something. When you go in there, there's a feeling for your place versus other places. So you've created a culture. But that's a lot of responsibility because just like your dad with you, somehow it's passed on. And so how do you see tackling that whole, and plus the economics?
I think overall for myself, like I said, it's always evolving. Like you were saying, like you be there and you made your different chapters that you popped in at, and it's always evolving. But for me, like I said, my biggest goal is I've never wanted to be that instructor that couldn't do anything and that was not physically fit or whatever. There's a lot of that in the industry where you see them and it looks like you got to roll them out onto the mats and they got to roll them off and they're not physically able to do anything. And I wonder if they ever could. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but there is that. So I've always said I never want to be like that. And then while I can, I want to dump as much of my passion and my influence into those people that are willing, that are my students and that are now my instructors, so that will be the legacy. I want them to be happy that later on when they I've had my students go and travel somewhere and they're like, oh, where did you train? Oh, I trained at Scheers. Oh, wow. And then they come back and they said, oh yeah, like before I know it, I hear about them. They moved there and they're like, yeah, I'm teaching at the club now. I'm like, you're damn right you are. You know what I mean? So that's what I want. Like, I want to be able to pass that on. And if that person can, continue that and push that, that's the way that I guess I will extend the legacy. I mean, there's a good chance my boys might continue on and want to do something like that. But if they don't, I'm cool with that. But I just want to have that as an option for them. But something that I'm not really pushing hard. Like I said, it's just a part of life. They're going to do that. And at that same token, just like I had when my dad said, hey, you're really good at this. Maybe you should keep it up. I'm sure we're going to have that conversation because I've asked them, what do you guys want to do? Like, do you want to do this or this? And my oldest, he was like, I want to do what you do. And I was like,
that's pretty cool, right?
I was like, well, that's pretty. I said, yeah. I was like, that's so pretty cool. But remember when there was COVID? We almost I'm taking out loans just to stay at
Aries, his oldest, Aries, has got. Sorry if you didn't discuss sharing our children's names, but he's an artist that you wouldn't believe. Like he'd be a comic book illustrator too. So Aries might have that to fall back on if he doesn't decide on martial.
Well, that's the thing. I just said I think you guys want to have like a trade or something else, and then you have this. right? Because that was a big reality check for me because I'd never done anything else. I didn't go to university. I've just been a full-time martial artist in business and doing that aspect. And then when that happened, and then you have this huge facility, and then they tell you, oh, but you can only have 8 people on a mat this big. Yet the clubs that are like a fraction of the size got to have the same amount of people. It was just mind-boggling to me. And like I said,
All of us.
yeah, you have to take loads to stay open. You know what I mean? And then it was like, I'm glad I did though, because it made we stayed relevant and we stayed going, and I was able to supply people some place to go to.
Yeah.
Have some place to burn that energy off, and so that was good. And now we're back to normal again, so it's like, okay, but that's when I look and I go with my boys, I'm like, this is a great industry, this is a great business, but you definitely need to have another aspect to fall back on, as much as you would love it, you know what I mean? Because when things get tough for people, well, the first thing goes is the luxuries. So it'd be like owning a movie theater. I mean,
I don't know about
when things
you
get
three,
tough, people
but
don't go.
When
That's
that
it.
happened, being able to work out and sweat was a release, right? During
Absolutely.
COVID, like,
Yeah.
people may cut that, but that's my number one priority
Yes.
when shit
Oh,
goes
man.
sideways.
Because
Non-negotiable.
if you like, I know for myself, like, I mean, I go to the gym and I gotta go do my time. I don't mind training with other people, but as I alluded to before, the most work I ever got done was the time that I spent by myself. When no one's watching, that's the work that counted the most to me. That's when I had to focus the most. That's when I had to, hone things in for myself, and that's where I found I excelled the most. Because always when there's people there, you have a tendency to, you can get distracted, or my brain goes, I gotta fix that. And I gotta
We always
deviate,
get
and
the
then I
best
gotta.
quotes at the end of the pods.
It's true.
Last time, that one is
So
work hardest when no one's looking.
All I can say is I am so pleased that you guys are friends, and then also, and the second part is I'm so pleased that your family's in Saskatoon and what you guys have done for Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada.
Well, what you guys have done for just the whole thing. I can speak. My whole life has been changed by you and your dad.
Well, I had a lot of influence, too, because I mean, there's a little bit of a reverse of the student and the teacher here, because I was never a hunter, and I did a little archery, and I remember him always trying to get me to go hunting, and I was like, I can't shoot a deer. I was just like, I just didn't. And he was like, how about a boar? And then he showed me some videos and pictures. I was like, okay, that thing could kill me. I can do that. So then
And
I
bow
started
hunting too.
Bow
Like,
hunting.
He went immediately
Right to the most difficult part.
Yeah,
Hardest one.
Yeah. And so then I think to a big part, I guess you can attest to that. I'm like, suddenly now I'm just like
Super focused. Yeah.
So
And
I'm
for
going
the
out
record,
and,
the amount of years I've done archery and bow hunting is pales in compared to him. He goes out to my place, and the biggest buck, I never even seen a buck that big. He kills that buck. It's on his wall in his living room.
yeah. This is my second buck.
So on that point, I think we've never even talked about like repeat guests.
He's
But-
got another like. He's got another
I
hour
don't
and
think
he's-
there's. I mean, I'm just looking at it here just for stats. This is our longest podcast. It feels like it's the shortest one in some ways. It doesn't do justice to cut it off at this point. So you're coming back, and
No,
please,
Probably bring his dad.
well, yeah,
Might be
but you
his
can.
own,
I mean,
yeah.
we would love to, right? Have your dad
Absolutely.
together or separate, but it's just awesome. And I think what I get goosebumps, is like living, breathing examples of what we're trying to converse about,
Multi-generational.
right? So thanks very much for taking the time.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me out. It's been good.
So that's
Thank you.
episode 7 in the can.
Love you, buddy.
Sir.
Yeah. Open the echo chamber.
And hopefully I redeemed myself from the DQ.
So I was going to ask you about.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, we'll leave it on that note. That's the next. People can go back and find that in the previous episode. That's a good one.
the
Yeah.
All right.
Blizzard
The
discussion.
Blizzard discussion. Cheers, everybody.